Coming up today, part 2 of a 2-part series, ranking the Seahawks positions. I went 13 through 7 in the last episode. Now we're going to go 6 through 1. Who's going to finish at the top? How much are you going to hate or love this list? Let's get into it. Seahawks Forever coming up next.
Welcome to the Seahawks Forever podcast. In-depth analysis on everything Seahawks. And now, here's your host, Dan Viens.
Hit that thumbs up, like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're always notified of future episodes. If you prefer audio podcasts, you can listen on any platform. But if you want to hear episodes without ads, you can only do that on Spotify. It is a very low monthly fee. That link will be in the description. Or if you just want to support me or the show, you can hit super thanks or buy me a coffee. Appreciate those of you who have done just that. So we're ranking the Seahawks position groups. And again, the parameters here, this is my opinion. My show, my opinion. I'm not using PFF grades or anybody else's opinions or rankings in this. This is just what I see. And some of the things that I look at are, I'm looking at some track record, obviously, but also upside and projection are heavily weighed in here because we have a lot of unknowns, right? Players in different positions playing for different coaching staff. So we might see some different things. Just to recap part 1, and that link will be down below as well if you caught this episode first and you want to go back and start there. At 13, the safety group. At 12, center. At 11, tackle. At 10, guard, offensive tackle. And 10, guard. 9, inside linebacker. 8, tight end. And 7, the specialists, the kickers and the long snapper. So here we go. Right out of the gate. Number 6, I have the outside linebacker group. And you can call this edge. It's kind of become sort of a convoluted term recently in the NFL. Everybody uses their outside guys differently. So many hybrid 3-4-4-3 schemes kind of coming down the pike. And especially now that we're seeing, I think it's 6 other teams now have hired coaches that are going to try to emulate what Mike Macdonald is going to do here in Seattle. Does this seem low to you for this group? There's a lot of talent there, right? But also when you see what's left to come, 5 through 1, I think you'll agree. The sum of Uchenna Nwosu, Boye Mafe, Derek Hall, possibly even Darrell Taylor seems good enough. A lot of youth, a lot of upside, a lot of contract control, except, Nwosu's the only guy really making money. But there's still a lot of projection and upside in this formula here. Nwosu, we know about. There's the track record, right? But he's coming off a major injury and it's in a new scheme. So we will have to see. Mafe took a big step forward last year. What was it? 7 straight games of the sack? But he wasn't as productive down the stretch. Was that him hitting a wall? Was it teams kind of figuring out his strengths and weaknesses? Was that on the Seahawks defensive coaching staff? Have we seen his ceiling, or is there another step forward coming? Hall never really found his footing. Maybe the shoulder injury that he played through was a little bit more significant than we thought. Is he going to have a year 2 type leap forward like Mafe did? I could see him being a strong fit in what Macdonald wants to do. The athletic profile, the motor, the character is not in question. And so we'll see what kind of year 2 he shows us. Taylor may have an uphill battle to make the roster, to be frank. His contract was restructured. It's a 1-year deal, very little guaranteed money on it, essentially no guaranteed money. So I've been saying it for weeks now. He's going to have to make this team. And even if he does, I think it might be in a little bit more of a specialized role. But his struggles in the run game are well documented. And I think that might open the door for a guy like Nelson Caesar, the undrafted free agent out of Houston, to make the team. The real wild card here at this position group is Draymond Jones, who, if you didn't catch the last episode, check it out. He may be playing more here than on the defensive line, which made kind of ranking those 2 position groups a little trickier. Number 5, cornerback. Again, some of you might think that this is low. And I did see some feedback from y'all on Twitter when I previewed this episode that some of you, I think, had cornerback as the number 1 position group. And if you just talk about raw physical talent, you might be right. There's so much talent here. It's just a matter of how these guys will be used and deployed, and we don't know that yet. If Rick Woolen meshes with the new staff, and they can get him locked back into the kind of development he showed his rookie year. And for all of the criticism he's taken in his ability against the run, go back and look at some tape from UTSA and even his rookie year. There are plenty of examples on tape of him coming up and smoking guys in the run game. Again, I've mentioned this in regards to a couple other players, but we know he was battling a shoulder injury last year, and that might have just made him hesitant to get physical. The sky's the limit for this guy. He can make himself a ton of money with a bounce back year over the next 24 months. So all eyes are on Rick Woolen. Devin Witherspoon, if he takes that second year jump, holy cow. I mean, we're talking about an all-pro player, right? If he stays healthy and he makes that next jump and he develops and he fits in with this scheme, we're talking about one of the guys on this roster that absolutely projects as a blue chip talent. Trey Brown's in the last year of his rookie deal. We've seen some good. We've seen some bad. We've seen some injury issues. And then we see moments like we did in Detroit last year where he was maybe the player of the game, made some huge plays in that game, and really turned that thing around in the second half. He might be playing, though, because of some of the depth we're going to talk about in a second here. He might be playing for his free agent future. So a big year for Trey Brown. And then the Hawks added 2 day 3 corners this year. Probably the most surprising thing about the draft, but one that the more I look at it, the more I like it. 2 very different players in DJ James and Nehemiah Pritchett. Pritchett more of an outside guy. James projects more in the slot, although they say they can use him in both spots. Both have a ton of upside, ton of versatility. They're both adept at playing press man because that's the scheme Auburn ran. They're young. They're cheap. They're hungry. It gives a lot of upside, but also, again, a lot of unknown. The wild card here is Mike Jackson. On a 1-year deal, they gave him the tender, then they renegotiated that down to basically the veteran minimum. I can see him really fitting in with Macdonald because outside of Witherspoon, he is the most physical of these corners. He's the biggest of these corners. Could he be a chess piece who also maybe plays some hybrid or some safety? I threw that idea at Corbin Smith last week, and he didn't really think he saw that, but I think Jackson is a guy. I think there's a chance that Jackson finds a role on this roster, and this might not be his last year in Seattle. I just see him as a guy that's going to mesh with Macdonald and his staff. So again, the corners, all the talent in the world, not quite sure how it's all going to fit together. That's why I hesitated to put them higher than this, but also because we have some really good position groups to talk about. Number 4, running back. Again, and I guess I should stop saying this because you can say it about all these position groups. We'll see. We'll see what kind of roles they have in mind for these guys. But is there a better young running back room in the league 1 through 3? There might be, right? Like that would be a fun exercise to go through all the other depth charts and check it out. But if Kenny McIntosh, who we just didn't get to see last year, he had a dynamic training camp, and then he gets hurt in the mock game. We didn't see him till the second half of the year on the roster, and then he never got any reps. If he can be healthy this year and show us what we think he is, and he's your number 3, then this could emerge as one of the best groups in the league. Mission number 1 for Ryan Grubb in the running game is to figure out which roles he wants Ken Walker and Zach Charbonnet to be in. Mission number 2, in my opinion, is to get Walker to stop darting as much and be more decisive and hit the hole. Love the ability to reverse field and make something out of nothing. But it needs to not be his default all the time because it was to a fault at times. Second half of his rookie year, he was much more dynamic after they made a concerted effort to get him to run north and south a little bit more. And then I thought he lost a little bit of that in year 2. Some of that may be on the offensive line. Some of it might be out of necessity. I understand that. right? Oddly enough, in my opinion, Charbonnet might actually be a better example of the type of back that Grubb likes best in his offense. So it'll be fascinating to see what they do with those two backs and how it all fits together. Number 3, and I know the big question for some of you going into this must have been like, where do the quarterbacks fit into this? I've got them 3rd. It's the toughest position to address in the NFL. And there is the old saying that if you have 2, you don't have 1. I don't think that's the case here. There are some who don't buy into Geno Smith as a quality NFL starter. I get that. I'm not here to debate that with you today. But I do feel like he's a quality starter in the NFL. Is he one of the elite guys? No. But I want to try, if I can contribute anything to this world, it would be to try to sway some of you to get away from the idea that if you're not an elite quarterback, if you're not a future Hall of Fame, top 5, top 6 elite blue chip quarterback in the NFL, you're garbage. There's a great middle ground there where teams can have a good quarterback, a really good quarterback that you don't think is very good, but that can take him to the promised land. And the Detroit Lions just handed out $220 million to Jared Goff, thinking he's exactly that guy. And I think that's kind of the range I think Geno Smith is in talent-wise. Not talking about the contract. We'll see how that works out in the next couple of years. He's much older, obviously, than Jared Goff. But talent-wise, I think it's similar. That's my A. I do think he's a quality NFL starter. B, the Seahawks have 2 guys who have proven they can play well in the NFL. And when your backup is 23 years old, younger than a lot of guys that were drafted in this draft, has started 17 games already, was leading the NFL in passing through 10 games, had multiple teams, good teams with extremely well-respected offensive-minded head coaches also trying to trade for him in the offseason, when Sean Payton and Sean McVay also want you, you're in pretty good shape. And I think Grubb is going to get the absolute best out of Geno Smith. I think we're going to see, with an improved offensive line and Ryan Grubb at the helm, we're going to see just how good Geno can be. My hunch is that we're going to see him be more consistent week in, week out, and be the better version of the Geno Smith that we've seen pieces of the last 2 seasons. And Howell could just be the long-term starter sitting and biding his time behind him. To have both of those guys in your room is why I've got him number 3. I think it's an enviable quarterback room for a lot of teams in the NFL. It's a tough combo to find. It doesn't come along very often because some teams, frankly, are afraid to have too much competition at that spot. The reason the Commanders reportedly wanted to trade Howell is because they were afraid he was almost too good to be there to have a rookie quarterback, high draft pick in the mix. He's too much of a competitor. He was going to make it uncomfortable for the rookie to come in. And also, final point, the Seahawks feel so good about this position that once again, they continue to just punt on the 3rd quarterback spot on the roster. They just don't believe in it. Number 2, now we're down to the last 2. What's left? Wide receiver, defensive line, right? And I went back and forth on this one, but I ended up going number 2, defensive line. And part of this is because I touched on it earlier. I'm not sure I can include Draymond Jones in this group now. Jones is a guy that I think is going to be revitalized. I think Mike Macdonald's going to find the best way to use him, but it sounds like part of that might mean a move to edge. And so he might only be a part-time, quote unquote, defensive lineman, which is why I had them at number 2. And also because when you get down into that, past the starters into that second team, you've got some unproven rookies in that group that I like the upside of, but we just don't know. So some of you might think this should be number 1. And I'll just start by saying this. Think back to 55 weeks ago, right before the 2023 draft. And remember what a panic we were all in about the shape of the defensive line. They had completely flushed out the entire group. Everybody but Miles Adams and Brian Monet, who was on the injured list, was let go after the 2022 season. And all they had done before the draft was sign Draymond Jones to that big deal and Jaron Reed. And that was it. They hadn't even signed Mario Edwards yet. They did that shortly before camp. We went into day 3 of the draft last year, freaked out that there just weren't enough defensive linemen. Then they take Cam Young and Mike Morris. And then we were still freaked out heading into training camp that even after adding Mario Edwards, there just wasn't enough good, solid depth there to rotate and to give you a good chance to be competitive in the NFC West up front on defense. Now look at it, right? I mean, you get Leonard Williams at the trade deadline. You draft Byron Murphy, the best defensive tackle in the league, a guy I think is going to be an all-pro this year in the draft, when some people didn't think that was a screaming need at 16. You add Jaron Reed to that, who had a resurgent year last year, coming off a not great year in Green Bay the year before. Miles Adams is back again. And now you add Cam Young, Mike Morris, and Jonathan Hankins, one of the best veteran nose tackles out there. Cam Young got a little bit of run late in the year. Mike Morris spent the entire rookie year on the injured list, but is the most unique guy of that group at 6'6", 295. Right? Maybe a couple dark horses, and Buda Jones signed as an undrafted free agent. Matt Gotel, who got some reps the last couple of weeks of last season, a true nose tackle type. The wild card here might be Morris. I mean, I just think he's so long, and that body type is so unique that he could be a real force. He obviously, Mike Macdonald knows him well, coached him for a year at Michigan. This group is very, very good. And I can't wait to see, that translate into what I assume is going to be much improved defensive front for the Seahawks, which leaves wide receiver at number 1. And going into this, I thought, and this was one of the genesis actually of the idea for this episode, or this 2-part series, is I saw PFF's rankings the other day, came out on the best and worst at each position group in the league. And the Seahawks weren't mentioned anywhere, which means they didn't think any of their position groups were the best. I understand that. A lot of newness, a lot of uncertainty. The rest of the league's not going to look as favorably on it as we do, because we look at it every day. But also, they didn't rate any of our position groups as the worst in the league either. But they had the Chicago Bears at number 1 as far as receivers go. And my first reaction to that was, wait a minute. You know, there's some parallels there. DK to DJ Moore, 2 young number 1 type receivers, about the same age, prime in their career. And then you have the 2 grizzled veterans, Tyler Lockett and Keenan Allen. And then you have the 2 young guys in Rome Odunze, drafted number 9 overall by the Bears this year, and JSN, Jackson Smith and Jigba, drafted 20th by the Seahawks last year. I thought, wait a minute, the Seahawks I would give a slight lean to the Seahawks in that group. And then I went and looked at some numbers and actually came out of it thinking, okay, I'll give this one to PFF, because it was a little bit better in the Bears' favor than I thought it was going to be. Let me know if you agree. Now, DK through 5 seasons, DJ Moore through 6 seasons. And so rather than give you total numbers, I averaged it out, what their average season looks like. DK, an average season, 74 catches, 1,066 yards. DJ Moore, 76 catches, 1,094 yards. Basically a wash. DK has the edge in touchdowns. He gets to the end zone more, 8.5 per year. DJ Moore just under 5 per year. So do we call that a wash? It's interesting. It was a much different picture than I thought I was going to see when I looked it up. I mean, but obviously the athletic profile, DK is kind of on another level, right? And I think, again, Ryan Grubb, my biggest complaint of Shane Waldron is there was just not a consistency from week to week in how he used his personnel. And there were times it just seemed like they either gave in to what the defense was showing in how they were defending DK, or they just forgot about him or got out of a plan. I think we could be in for a monster season from DK Metcalf this year. Then you look at the 2 old guys, right, and compare them. And again, I was a little bit surprised by this. I know Keenan Allen is he a Hall of Famer? Probably a Hall of Famer, right? He's just had some injury issues. He's had some major injuries he's had to overcome in his career, but man, he's been productive. Average seasons, I mean, Keenan Allen wins this one hands down, which tells you how good he is, because Tyler's career has been outstanding too. In 9 seasons, Tyler, a year younger, 31 years old, averages 68 catches, 888 yards, 6.5 touchdowns, and 40 first downs. Keenan Allen, at 32 years old, 11 seasons in the league. But I think I don't have it in front of me. I think 2 of those 11 seasons at minimum basically wiped out because of injury. And so maybe it's a wash. Keenan Allen, his average season, 82 catches, 957 yards, 5.3 touchdowns, and 50 first downs. That's Hall of Fame stuff, right? And then you get to Odunze versus JSN. We've seen what JSN can do for a full season in the league. Not schemed for very well the first half of last year, right? And Odunze hasn't played in the NFL yet. Now, the athletic upside here goes in Odunze's favor. I think it's an interesting comparison. I just wanted to kind of play that for you because of the PFF piece coming off of that. But I do think it shows you just how good this wide receiver group is, that they're even that close to what might be the best overall group in the league. And then you start getting down farther than that. And we saw what Jake Bobo could do last year. And I think there's a bunch more untapped potential there because of his size and his route running ability and his hands. Maybe use him inside a little bit more. I think Laviska Shenault is a guy that's a playmaker. He wins a lot of 50-50 balls. He can help you in the return game as well. There's some cool things happening there, even at the bottom of that receiver group. I think it'll be one of the most fun things to watch in the preseason is some of those younger receivers. So that's it for part 2. Wrapping it up, we go 6 outside linebacker, 5 corner, 4 running back, 3 quarterback, 2 defensive line, 1 wide receiver. Let me show you, if you're watching on YouTube, what it all looks like as a full ranking. There it is. Safety from bottom to top. Safety, center, tackle, guard, inside linebacker, tight end, the specialists, outside linebacker, corner, running back, quarterback, defensive line, and number 1 receiver. What do you think? You know what to do. Hit the comments. Tell me what you agree with or disagree with. Any points that you think I missed, or, if you want to take some time and tell me the points that you like the best, you can do that as well. While you're doing that, subscribe, hit like. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, leave a 5-star review if you really like what I do. That really helps placement of the show. I am Dan. This is Seahawks Forever, at Seahawks Forever on Twitter. I'll be finishing up my look at the NFC West opponents this week with Jake Ellenbogen, and I have just confirmed a podcaster for the Arizona Cardinals too. So look for that the rest of the week. And then, of course, the big schedule release tomorrow. I will react to that as quickly as I can after that comes out. Until then, forever and always, go Hawks. Thanks for watching, you guys.